Hi, everybody. I have been sitting back here watching the pregame show, and it was so beautiful. I had to call Ty up here to watch. He was sitting here in the background, and I said, just feel that energy, feel the love. Is this awesome or what? And I know Christy said it, and I have to agree with her. I spent hours today making sure I had my details straight to share with you this evening about a topic that's was a bit of a downer for me. And so I had to really keep my mood up all day. But oh, this last hour and a half, I could just feel the energy building, just like Christy said. And now to have you all here with us in person is just a blessing. So we're going to have a lot to cover this evening, but I just want to thank my whole team there. I'm not going to give all the names because hopefully you came in early and saw them all. I have the 6 women assisting me in this work, but don't worry, I have one man. That's Jayesh Mitha, and he's in South Africa and usually can't join us for these events, but we really appreciate Jayesh as well. Also want to acknowledge that Lynette is fully retired, but she's watching us from her home near Atlanta tonight. Hey, Lynette, we love you. And let's see, anybody else? Just want to thank Ty for putting up with me. We went out to walk the dogs, and I was like, hey, I haven't seen you much today. And just we see each other at meals, and then I go back to my computer. But we do have a lot to cover tonight, really only a couple topics, but so many lessons for all of us. And that's what I try to do, to take experiences that I've had and moments when I've interacted with spirit and share them with all of you as a way of showing how connected we all are, how our lessons are universal, and hopefully give you something of value here this evening. Before we really get started, I noticed, I don't know who it was, Christy mentioned the upcoming documentary Wolf's Message, and she's right. I hope you have read the book. If you haven't, after you see this film, you're going to want to read it. Jim Spruill is our director. He and his wife Gloria are joining us watching this evening. Hey, Jim and Gloria, we love you guys. Their son in spirit, Dakota, brought us all together in a beautiful way. And I'm so excited that, surprise to me, up until 2 weeks ago, I had no idea that we are going to take the show on the road, literally. The documentary comes out. We'll be ready to release it at the beginning of April. And Ty and I are in the midst of planning a round the US tour to share the documentary at live screenings. The documentary lasts about an hour, and then I'll answer Q&As, give a little discussion of the behind the scenes stories. Various times we'll be joined by Mike and Beth, who are watching tonight. That's Wolf's father and stepmother, whichever one them can join us, and maybe Jim Spruill will be able to join us at some of these. But I apologize. I know this is a very international group joining us for this webinar, but those of you who are in Canada, the US, let me show you our tour map. It's coming together right now. Here's where we are planning to be. We're going to take the documentary to everywhere you see a yin yang symbol from April to October.
Wow.
Bev is working on the schedule. We have all the places identified. She's just now one by one reaching out to various venues, mostly Unity churches and Science of Mind churches where I have spoken over the years for these screenings. So as each one is confirmed, it will go on the Wolf's Message website, which is just about ready to go live. So I hope that all of you are on my email list, and you'll find out when the Wolf's Message website goes live, and we'll be able to click on the links and get details for each one. So I know that we didn't hit every state. I hope those of you who are not in a state we're visiting recognize that we can't visit every state, but that is a very ambitious tour. There over 30 cities where we're going to be in person, going around in our tour bus. So it's going to be exciting and fun. And the most important thing is the documentary. I've seen the whole thing now. It is phenomenal. It's so much more powerful and beautiful than I ever dreamed. The messages, well, let me just put it this way. Have you been to one of those movies where the movie ends and nobody moves? People just sit there to the very last credit, and then they just sit there some more because you're just processing it. This is that kind of movie. So the messages that it carries are profound, thanks to Wolf across the veil coming back. to all of us to share what we need to hear as a species. So look forward to sharing that with you. Let's get on with the program tonight now. And as you know, if you've joined me in the past, we like to start with an invocation and bring us together as a group. Stephanie, would you turn off chat for now so that that doesn't distract everybody? If you have questions for the Q&A, you put those in the Q&A box. Don't worry about the chat. Okay? So in awareness that we've all been doing our own separate things all day long, but now it's just beautiful if we come together and recognize that we're all united by our shared desire to awaken and enjoy this loving energy. Why don't you join me for a moment? Just close your eyes, take a nice relaxing breath, and get centered, moving your awareness to the heart. And in awareness that we are so much more than only human, that we are all beautiful lights of spirit. We are souls who came here to create and to evolve. May our very presence here together as one unified group, whether we're listening live or later, our presence in this energy will help us do exactly that, to evolve our human story to the point where we become more aligned with our soul energy, which knows only love, which knows we are all direct expressions of one source, one God, one spirit. May we each hear something this evening that uplifts us, that helps us move forward, that helps us heal. May we each receive healing transmission from the energy coming through from spirit this evening, and may we become beacons of light and healing forces for those around us. As individually and collectively, we help to heal ourselves and our world. And so it is. All right. Oh, that just kind of brings the energy in nice and coherent. After all that excitement, we still feel the excitement, but now it's just been transmuted into gratitude. All right. I know we have a lot of people who have never been to one of these events. I hope you just love the energy. Did you just see something go floating by? I don't know if that was a feather or an orb. Somebody caught an orb in another video I did, and it's pretty cool. Lots of energy. But I always start these evenings by sharing some of the awesome evidence that has come through in connections I've made in my readings since we last gathered a month ago. I do this for two reasons: to celebrate that this connection is so real, that our loved ones are truly here, that we don't die as souls. Our physical bodies may die, but we don't. Our essence remains eternally. Our love remains always with those we love and as part of the whole. So we share these stories for that reason, but also because throughout this evening, I'll be talking about us as souls. And this evidence proves it, that we are souls. So some of them are just fun and some of them are real wows. And let's get on with that then. Let's see. This one was just pretty simple, but it just kind of stunned me that there are certain things I love to hear from those in spirit when they come through. It goes back to my very first training with Janet No Havoc. I want to know how you died. I want to know what kind of work you did if you were old enough to have a job. I want to know, well, certainly male or female, and what your relationship is to my client. Those kinds of details right away show me I have a good connection. So I was connecting with my client's husband in spirit. Identified his personality. She said, oh, yes, that's him. Absolutely. We go beyond generic and get layers of personality because everybody has little unique quirks and things. And that's what we go for. But this man said to me, clear as day, I was in marketing. And she said, that's exactly what he did. And later I found out he was the one person in the world that started the whole concept of focus groups for marketing. That's a big deal. That was somebody that wasn't just in marketing. He was like a marketing guru, and we had a very direct connection. And then just one other thing that delighted me was I may not see yet the spirit's faces clearly enough to describe them, but I see many other details very clearly. And he clearly held out daffodils for her. And often Ty and I will go for walks, and he'll say, do you know what that flower is? And I said, no, I don't. I'm not really good at flora and fauna. But man, in spirit, when spirit shows me daffodils or daisies or violets, it's so distinct and clear. And she said, oh my gosh, daffodils were our thing. He gave them to me all the time. So very specific, and I loved that. Then this woman's grandfather came through in the same reading. I knew she was in Italy doing the reading. I knew she was Italian, but her grandfather said to me a word. It was like somebody actually speaking to you and you can't hear them right. I heard grappa. Now, I'm not a big grappa drinker. I couldn't even tell you what it tastes like now, but I know it's some Italian drink. And he brought up grappa and held it up like a toast. And she laughed and she said, my grandfather was from the region in Italy that is famous for grappa. And when she was born, he held up a glass and said, everyone must toast my new granddaughter with grappa. I mean, ooh, goosebumps, huh? I feel everybody's goosebumps. What a thing to get through. You want to talk about a gold nugget specific. That was so beautiful. But this one really got me. This is one of those gold nuggets that shows this is real-time, two-way communication between the medium and the spirit. This is not pulling data out of the air from the way he shared this information with me. I said to my client, your grandfather is now holding one of his feet in his hand and hopping up and down on the other foot. I know he's showing me that he had some wound in his foot that's significant enough you would know about it. She shook her head. She said, I don't know. He died when I was pretty young. And I said, well, check with your mother. She will know. I love that when you just trust spirit so much that you don't take a client's no for a no. So you're going to hopefully be as amazed by this as I am. She got back to me by email later and she said, Suzanne, you were right about him being wounded in the foot. He shot himself in the foot to avoid service in World War II. Oh, you hear stories like that, but to meet somebody in spirit who actually did it and showed it that way, I mean, he wasn't specific with the gun, but good evidence, huh? Wow. So that was one reading that I don't think I'll forget that one pretty soon. Pretty cool. Another one, just a very simple one, just could really feel this woman's father in spirit. But suddenly, as I merged with him, I felt myself riding on a train. The train was moving. I'm feeling the train's motion. And I spread out a newspaper like this. I became this woman's father. I said, I'm riding the train like your dad. I'm reading the newspaper. This is his daily habit. She said, oh my God, that's my dad. He rode the train into the city to commute every day to work, and he would take the paper. That's what he did. I want you to notice how I felt him because I invite the spirits to merge with me. Any of you who've taken my classes, we talk about merging to sense someone psychically or to sense the spirits, and you literally become one with them. Well, then her brother stepped in, merged with me, and I said, boy, I just have the desire to drink beer. And people ask, how do you know this is not you, your imagination making it up? Well, I don't really care for beer and I don't drink it that often. But I sure knew that her brother liked beer. And she said, now I know it's my brother because he actually took the labels off of beer bottles and had an entire album filled with beer bottle labels. So that's how those in spirit can take something that would be generic, because a lot of people drink beer, and bring it up as a specific habit or hobby. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Now, the reason I share this evidence tonight also is to show you how you know through experience when you're in the flow with the spirit, you feel you're merging with them, versus when the connection is off. And so I had some really good readings up until halfway through the month. And then we hit a big glitch. And that's going to be part 2 of this evening here. What happened? The rest of these readings I'm going to share with you happened after the glitch. So as I'll be sharing with you later, I had 2 specific challenges last month that caused me to become so out of balance. I had to call off 3 out of 4 readings after they'd already started. So let me just discuss with those of you who are practicing mediums, this is not a good thing to be pulling teeth to get information from a spirit when you know the connection normally just flows. And so you pull out all the tools in your toolbox, you turn up the love, you take deep breaths, you calm down, you think thoughts of gratitude to get the link back, you shift again, and it's just not working. And usually after about 15 to 20 minutes of pulling teeth, I'll say, I'm so sorry. This is not up to my standards. It's not the way mediumship works. And I can tell on the spot if I need to reschedule or just turn them over to another medium. I didn't do the same with all 3 of these readings, but it's awkward. It can be embarrassing if you're in human mode, but I believe I was able to just say, this happens sometimes. But what doesn't happen is 3 out of 4. I'll have one occasionally that I have to call off. There have been only a few times over the years when I've had 2 almost in succession. And then you can usually identify what's wrong. I had 2 I had to call off this last month. Then I had a pretty decent one. And then a 3rd one that I had to call off. And that's when I knew something was wrong. We'll get to that. But now the next bits of evidence I'm going to share with you were after I was healed. And we're going to talk about how that healing took place. But this is just to show you that it is possible to get it back. We don't lose it forever, this connection. There is an energetic reason, almost, yes, the guides say always, almost always. It's an energetic misalignment, the guides say. All right. So why don't we just lose it? Because we are energetic beings. The connection is natural. We simply need to be in balance and aligned with the soul. So if you have a history of having a very good connection and suddenly it's not there, check your energy field. I want to, before I forget, tell you an amazing God wink. I spent the whole day preparing my notes for this evening, and I got an email about an hour and a half ago from a colleague. Capital letters, subject line, help. She has no idea I'm about to do this webinar, has no idea what I've been through. And she said, Suzanne, something's gone wrong with my connection. I've lost it. I don't understand it. It's just like, wow, are you kidding me? And I picked up the phone and called her and I said, let's talk. So it's very interesting timing. Well, let's just talk some more. After I have my healing, I go to do my next reading. And you would think, the human side would say, am I going to fail again? I've learned to trust spirit, and I knew I was back in balance. I could just tell from everything else in my life, I was aligned again. So I'm very pleased and grateful to be able to say I went into that next reading after the healing, knowing it would be fine. Why? Because I trust spirit. When we can get ourselves out of the way, spirit will never let us down. And as I got ready for that reading, I saw this symbol that I always see, usually from my wonderful friend and guide, Brenda. It's a basketball player doing a slam dunk. Goosebumps there. Thanks, Brenda. A slam dunk means, don't you worry, this reading's going to be good. I love that. We want all readings to be good, but some of them just flow like that, and the evidence is off the charts, and we had that one at that time. In this particular case, I sensed the person's loved one that they exactly wanted to hear from. He showed me the signs for a sudden passing, and then unfortunately I saw the sign for suicide, but it was correct. So we knew right off the bat that we had this person's loved one. What stunned me, the clarity in this reading, I saw my symbol for tattoo, and then I heard the words death before dishonor. And I saw a character from a medical show that I've been enjoying recently called The Resident. The main character in that TV show had the tattoo, death before dishonor. Now, I tell all my students, report objectively what the spirits are showing you. So I reported exactly what I just said to you to my client. And she said her loved one had that exact tattoo. It wasn't just figurative. He had death before dishonor. Oh my God. I knew we were back in battery. Talk about gratitude, not just for the connection, but for my client who can deny that her loved one was right there. In that same reading, I sensed that she had a miscarriage. I always love when those little souls come through to say, I'm still part of your soul family. I always have been, and you will meet me when you cross the veil. In that reading, since I'm back in the flow, I decided to try a technique that I haven't given a lot of attention to, but it works really well. So I'm pleased to share it with all of you now who are learning to connect with spirit or already doing so. And that is to allow those in spirit, trusting that they are benevolent spirits and that you cannot be harmed, to merge so completely with you that you see through their eyes, that you become them. And as I invited this woman's loved one to merge with me, I then tried a technique of, in my mind's eye, stepping in front of a mirror. I'm trying new techniques to try to see them enough to describe them. I saw a baseball cap on my head, which would have really been his head, and I saw a short cropped military style haircut. And she said, yeah, he always wore a ball cap and had that short, and I described brown hair. So it worked. It was so cool. I look forward to working with that technique more. Janet Nohavik taught me that back in 2009, but it just until now has not really proved fruitful, which shows you, like I always say, there's just constant improvement available for all of us. And then he told me his name, and it was accurate, which people always love. I love it too. He showed me what he drove. I was sitting in his pickup truck driving it. So really good connection. Then let's talk about specific. Remember, this is after the slump. So I'm really thrilled. He told me that that my client has 2 children, specifically 1 boy and 1 girl. Yes, she confirmed that. And that her screensaver on her phone is the picture of the grandkids. And my human side is saying, does every grandparent have their kids' picture, their grandkids on the phone? Not necessarily, but she did, and he knew all about it. It feels so obvious when you bring these things through in a reading because you become that person and you just know it. But to have it validated is awesome. And then at the end, after all this great connection, we got a whole bunch of information from an older woman standing where I normally feel mothers, and she just didn't recognize her. So I just kept getting more and more information. She said, no, I don't recognize her at all. And then finally, I heard a name. I passed it along, and she said, oh, well, that's my godmother's name. And I said, go back to the recording when I send it to you, check everything that came through, and let me know if that was your godmother. So pretty cool that I don't always get names, but when I do, it often turns out to be very significant and helpful. I loved this one moment I want to share with you about another reading so you can understand how much your guides see you and know what you're up to. This woman wanted to hear from guides. She wanted to hear what they had to say to her, what advice they had for her. So we did hear from some of her loved ones, and then suddenly I sense her guides. I don't see them. I don't feel a distinct personality, but I get pulled upwards and the information about the client flows as it did in this case. And the guide said, word for word, tell her crystals are most beneficial. As they said that, she holds up her hand. Little known to me, she'd been sitting there holding a giant crystal quartz the whole reading. Clearly, the guides knew it because they just wanted to acknowledge and honor that that was a good practice for her to sit there and hold that. Thought it was great. And then let's see, just one more, and then we'll close the evidence part of this evening with a very special closing. But I was truly celebrating the clarity with which spirit can talk to you. I saw a medium do and get the kind of information I'm about to share with you. I saw it in a class that Mavis Patilla was teaching when one of my fellow classmates got up. Oh, I remember, I was hosting Mavis, so I wasn't a student in the class. She came to Florida and she had people give gallery readings. And one of the students was so good, I don't know why he was a student, because he got up there and said something so specific. I sat back and thought, wow, I would love to get that kind of information one day. And I got it in this reading after my healing. gave a whole reading to my client. And right near the end, I said, your father in spirit, who we had been connecting with, just showed me that beside you, and I can't see it, is a stack of spiritual books. And he says that the one on top of the pile, now notice, I don't know there are books beside her. All I can see is a Zoom screen, right? A stack of spiritual books. If you go to the top spiritual book on the stack, he says, go to page 64. It's significant. You'll find that to be so. But the reading's over, so you check it later and get back to me. I was so excited because I knew it was real. I knew it was going to be significant. I couldn't wait to get the email. And it was just like that guy had done in the class years earlier. So she emailed me within minutes. She said, there are actually 3 spiritual books on the floor that are on the go right now with me. The one on top was A Course in Miracles, a spiritual book. And she said, I've been going through it day by day, trying to get through the whole thing. She said, I turned to page 64, and Suzanne, that's the page I started with today. Oh my gosh, that's significant. And then she read the message. She sent me screenshots of the message from A Course in Miracles. She says, this describes my relationship with my dad, who was the one that said to look at that. And then she said, just to be sure, I checked page 64 on the other 2 books, and both of them were left-facing pages at the end of a chapter that were blank. You know how when you go to a new chapter, often they'll just, for formatting's sake, keep it blank. So very clearly, Dad knew what she was reading and got that through very specifically. I'm so grateful to Spirit for that connection. This is what's possible for those of you who are called to be a medium, who stay with it, who don't give up, who go through slumps and don't claim, I've lost it. We don't lose it. Okay. So the final little gift that I said I would share with you, and we said in one of our emails we sent out, a visit from Mavis Patilla. I hope most of you know who she is. She's one of the best mediums in the world, practicing medium for over 50 years. I wrote her biography, Droplets of God. She was one of my original mentors and became a friend and colleague who I love dearly. She was married for years to a lovely woman named Jean Else, who was always at her side and always sat in on her classes, and is now leading a year-long course with the Shift Network that I'm a part of. I come in, they have the students who are part of this certificate program for a year, meet weekly. I come in once a month, 9 times throughout the year for a master practitioner session where I share something of interest that has to do with what they're learning that month. So this past month, January, was the first master practitioner session with me for the year. So I sat down, I knew what I was going to talk about. I just expanded my consciousness like I do before these sessions so that my guides work with me and through me as I'm teaching. And suddenly I felt Mavis. I felt her right here. And she was just kind of, sitting back like this, just watching. She wasn't saying much, but I could tell that she was just letting me know, I love that you're part of this. I love being with my students, and I'll be watching. No, not spying, not pressure, just enjoying. So spontaneously, I said, well, Mavis, what do you have for us? I figured she'd give a little piece of evidence or something. And she held out her hand and handed me an oyster shell. This is another one of those cases where this is coming from a spirit, because there was no reason for me to see an oyster shell. But I also immediately knew why she showed me that. Very clever. Anybody who has ever studied with Mavis has heard her talk about mediumship as being a pearl of great price, meaning oysters get sand inside the shell. Oyster shells get sand inside, and that irritant causes the pearl to form. And what Mavis was saying, and throughout all of her years of teaching, was, we make sacrifices to be mediums. It's not always pleasant. It can be awkward and there can be irritations, but we work and work to polish our gifts. And it's a pearl of great price, but oh my gosh, is it worth it for the healing and the comfort and the love that we bring to people, the realization that life is eternal. So I shared that with the class, just thinking that's a really nice message from Mavis. but I didn't realize how evidential and perfect it was. Why? I get an email from Jean, her wife, after the class is over. She had been tuning in, of course. I'm going to share my screen. It turns out there are 15 tutors who are leading small groups for this year-long program. Trying to get my screen to advance, and it's not. Come on. Oh, gosh. Okay. Help. Hang on a sec. Now I can't even get out of that. Oh, screen sharing has stopped. Give me a second, because it's really worth it to see the picture. Oh my gosh. I closed out PowerPoint, and I don't want to screw up anything by. Oh, we still have it. Good, good, good. I have PowerPoint. I didn't want to lose it here. Here it is. For Christmas, Jean gave all of her tutors for this course this same necklace. It's a pearl in a shell. How perfect is that? What does that tell us? That tells us, of course, Mavis knows Jean gave those necklaces to all of her tutors. So with that beautiful piece of evidence, it just tells all of us she is here watching, and she knows the sacrifice that the students are making. So I love that. And I hope it shows you that, Mavis just dropped in. I didn't call on her. She, of course, would be present for this class when we're all sharing beautiful teachings about mediumship. So I hope you enjoyed that. All right. Boy, those evidence sections usually go about half an hour, and that's what we got this month. So now we're going to shift gears. And I know that most of you saw the emails we sent out and the announcements on social media about the fact that I fell for a scam this past month. And for the first time, I ever had to call off 3 out of 4 consecutive readings. Were those 2 events related? Yes, but not exactly how you would think. So I'll share all of this, and hopefully lots of lessons for all of you. As you know, I often pray and encourage all of you to pray. May my lessons be as painless as possible. I'm not exactly sure how much of this I really had to go through, except for the teaching that would ensue for all of us. So sometimes I know my guides let me go through some of these things because it ends up being a big lesson. If at the soul level I agreed to that, maybe I'm supposed to be grateful. But I'm not at the human level so grateful for what my whole team went through as a result of this. But I'd just like to pause for a second. And I'm going to set an intention. If you want to join me in these words, please follow along with me. But I want to set the intention that as I share this information, that none of us be dragged down by it, that the energy remain high as a teaching point, that none of us succumb to fear, that I not slip back into the state that I was in while this happened, that we not open any wounds, that we not cause fear to anyone, that this information be shared as we are upheld at a high level by our guides and angels for learning. And that if any of this triggers any wounds in anyone, that they recognize it immediately and the angels take away any dissonant energy. All right. I like that. I feel good about that. And I hope you all will benefit from this discussion. So I've been on dozens of podcasts, other people's podcasts, been interviewed many times over the years, and I love sharing the messages of hope with people. And for the past couple of years, Stephanie's been working with me to help get the word out, especially about when my book, The Awakened Way, came out. So while we were preparing for that to be launched about a year ago, Stephanie and a wonderful friend named Sandra Clark were reaching out to specific people that Sandra thought she might have connections to, and one of them was Gabby Bernstein. Bernstein, I'm sorry, but I don't know how to say her name correctly. If anyone on my team knows, you can unmute yourself and make sure I get it right, because I want to get it right. All right. So in any case, all of a sudden we got an email. One of my assistants, I think Melissa, screens the emails. She got an email that I was invited to be on Gabby Bernstein's podcast. She passed it along to Stephanie, my chief assistant, and Stephanie was all excited. She said, after all this time, we got an invitation to be on Gabby Bernstein's show. What do you say? Well, I said, of course, I'm going to say yes to that one. She has a very large reach, and that's going to allow us to reach many people. What surprised me about the email was she was even offering to pay an honorarium for being on the podcast. I'd never heard of anybody doing that. I thought, wow, she must have money to throw around if she's going to pay people for a podcast, because I know a lot of people would do that for free to be on a podcast. It did not set off a red flag. I wouldn't do it just for the money, but I just noted that's interesting. Come to find out that that's the exact amount that was offered is a very standard practice in this particular scam. Didn't know this was a scam. So Stephanie reached out, responded, yes, Suzanne's interested. And Jeff from allegedly Gabby's team emailed back and said, okay, here are some potential dates for Suzanne to be on the show. I took over from there because it's much easier for me to manage my own calendar. Thank you, Stephanie. And I wrote back, emailed several times back and forth with Jeff, and we chose a date for me to be pre-recorded for Gabby Bernstein's podcast. And then once we got the date set up, Jeff emailed back and said, you're probably used to using Zoom, but we use a different platform. I'd like to set up a meeting by Zoom with you to go over how we're going to do the recording and make sure your settings are right. I have to tell you all, I've done this before with other people who use platforms other than Zoom for pre-recording podcasts or for live recordings. And they use things like StreamYard or Riverside. Especially when people use Riverside, met ahead of time and make sure that we can adjust the cameras and the microphone and everything's fine. So I didn't see anything unusual about this. It's a bit of a pain to find an extra moment in my calendar when we can take the time to meet. But we chose that time, put it on the calendar, and Jeff even emailed me 2 hours ahead of time. Are we still meeting today at 3 o'clock? I said, yep, see you then. So I was surprised when I click on at 3 o'clock. I click on first, and in comes another Zoom window. And I was surprised that it didn't say Jeff, it said podcast management, and his camera was off. Surprised, but okay. He started writing. I greeted him by saying, hi, Jeff. And I was surprised that he had an accent. I just noted that. I wanted to ask, oh, where are you from? Because I was a language major. I'm interested in these things. He sounded, well, I won't say what country it sounded like, but definitely was a foreigner. And he explained that he have a system that goes through Facebook Live. I got to hold the energy up here. And that it's different and it'll be live when we record it later, and that it requires adjusting some settings. I said, yep, I understand that. And I said, are you going to come on camera? Because I love seeing people. When I do readings and they come on camera, I feel an immediate lift. Are you going to come on camera? He says, no, I'm going to walk you through it as you share your screen. But he was really quick to say no. But again, just a little catch in my awareness, but I wasn't questioning this. Everything to this point was just what I was used to, but a little bit off. So he started walking me through, here's how we get into the back end of your Facebook page. We go to this Meta platform that connects Facebook and Instagram. I'm really not much into the tech part. My lovely team usually helps me with these things, but I'm savvy enough to get in trouble, obviously, now, because he said, now you see over here where it has the names of the people that have control to your Facebook. This is where we need to get access so that we can do this and that. And I didn't get a red flag once again, but I was unable to do what he was showing me. And I said, let me get my assistant Bev on here. She set up Facebook. She knows how to do all of this. So I called Bev, who's in the middle of a meeting with my other team member. I think it was Meredith. And I could hear her laughing. She said, here's Suzanne, she needs me, get used to this. We always have little crises that come up. I could see Bev laughing because this is, we have so many balls in the air all the time. So she told Meredith she'd get back to her. And I said, Bev, I'm on with this guy trying to set up for Gabby Bernstein's interview, and it's not working. Here's the URL I need you to type in. And it was facebook.com/blah, blah, blah. Absolutely sounded like a legitimate website. Bev typed it in and she said, Suzanne, this comes up on my malware software or whatever as a phishing site. And I said, that doesn't make sense. It's facebook.com. And I said, let me try Stephanie. Maybe you have some firewall off. This is how I'm already, getting pulled into this thing. So Bev went back to her meeting. I get Stephanie on the line, my other assistant. And I said, Steph, I have Jeff on Zoom here. We're doing this meeting. Let me put you on speakerphone. Would you type in facebook.com/whatever it was? She typed it in and she got in. So right away, I dismissed Bev's phishing thing. But in the back of the mind, it's now in the conscious mind, but I'm ignoring it. So I'm more concerned that the time's running out here. I have to do a reading in about a half an hour, and we're doing all this technical stuff. I'm getting thrown off by all this manipulation. Can we just get it over with so I can get on with my reading? So you can see I'm distracted, and now I'm just going along with this. Well, he had us make a few more manipulations. And then I was saying, it's just not working. I see what you want me to do. And I could feel and hear the frustration in my voice. And he said, let me take over control of your mouse. Now, that's when I got a really big red flag, because I know I don't do that with people, because I know now somebody can do anything they want in my computer. So something, okay, the guide said they were only going to let me go so far. All right. I said no, and then he said, look, we're out of time. I only get 45 minutes on these Zoom calls. Log off and we'll log back on again. All right. So I said, Steph, we're going to log off and then we can both join him back in this Zoom room. You have the link. So all of a sudden he disappeared. I clicked the same link for the Zoom reading and it never came back on. As the minutes started clicking by, I had this sinking feeling, oh my God, that was not real. And all of it just flooded into my mind. We have a problem here. And I said, Steph, try to get into Facebook. And she was blocked. And I was no longer in the list of access to my own Facebook page. We quickly called our social media team, who's been helping us with posts for the last few months. They were still showing up. We could see it on the screen, but our names were gone. These two women were brilliant. They immediately took away any credit card information that was in there. In case you ever want to boost a post, I didn't even know it was in there. Your credit card info is in there so that you can place ads, which we just hadn't done to that point. And so the one woman said, we got rid of your credit card, but now I'm blocked out. So it's just like this dominoes falling one by one. Whoever had access to the back of my Facebook page was locked out. And just then Ty got home. I called him and I said, oh my God, Ty, I just fell for a scam. I told him what had happened. He said, did you give him credit card information? I said, God, no. I said, no social security number, didn't give him anything, but go check the credit card account. And I'm just so grateful that nothing ever happened with our credit card or our banking information, but I was locked out of Facebook from the back end, but I could still see my Facebook account. Those of you who know about Facebook and Instagram, you get this little blue badge that we had earned for our trustworthiness. The blue badge was gone. And then this guy's name showed up in my back end of Facebook, and it sure wasn't Jeff. It was a foreign name. And I found him on Facebook, and the blackness that welled up in me was just tremendous. To have people that deceive you like that. And I will admit, I reached out and I emailed him and I said, I know what you've done. What did you hope to gain from this? Because I didn't know what was he going to gain. So we immediately went full speed ahead trying to get him out of there and get our access back. But anybody that's been through this, there is next to no way to reach support at Facebook or Meta. There are no phone numbers. And in fact, Stephanie found a few numbers and every one of them was a scam. It really put us on alert. And let me catch my breath here. And I got to thinking, well, we just won't use Facebook anymore. We won't use Instagram. But, you know, I got to thinking this mission is about reaching people. We have worked really hard to build a loving community. Any of you who've been on my Facebook page know that people don't get snarky and nasty on our Facebook page. It's loving comments, and we put loving things out there. And the Daily Way message read by 40,000 people a day who don't use the app. So we kept at it. But truly, every time I would go on my Facebook page, I would feel this adrenaline rush of fear, like waiting for the next shoe to drop. And it kept dropping. Like, and then the next thing you know, Stephanie couldn't access Facebook at all. I could still post the daily message, but I couldn't get in the back end to make any changes. So we got our social media team to try to help us. Even they couldn't find a real person, but I'm so pleased that one of the comments they made was, you all are so calm about this. And we're so impressed by how you can just put it aside and get on with your work and then get back to it when you can. We didn't go crazy, but I will tell you, I was very, very aware of my human feelings that kept coming up. And I had to use tool number 1, which is to say repeatedly, isn't that interesting? I mean, it really helps. It takes you to neutral observer instead of getting caught up in things. But I will tell you that in the middle of the night, as this was lingering for several days, because we couldn't fix it, and we didn't tell anybody that what we were going through because it was a work in progress. In the middle of the night, I found myself going to very human places and cursing this man and wanting to do some very nasty things to him. I mean, truly, in a very human way. And luckily, by coincidence, somebody at that time sent me a recording without knowing what I was going through of the Ho'oponopono song. I don't know if you all know that, but it's a Hawaiian technique that helps you with forgiveness and finding peace. And so after I received that, I would lie in bed saying, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, which is the last thing you want to say to somebody who has hurt you and deceived you, but it takes you above the fray and has a really nice energetic field to it that does help with healing. But that panicky feeling came up repeatedly. So then I tried what is the technique? It's a trauma technique that I've shared a lot with you, and it really helped. When I would feel the panic rising, like, what else is he going to have access to? What else has he done? I truly felt violated because here's somebody, some foreigner on a black screen that watched me, used me, deceived me, and I never saw him, but he saw me. It was just really very much a violation. I called on Archangel Michael repeatedly. Didn't feel his presence because I was blocked. But I did that trauma technique where I ask you to breathe in deeply. When you get to the top of the breath, you breathe in again. And you tell your left brain, you can relax now. The danger is past. Thank you for protecting me. And then you exhale. That really helped a lot, but I still could tell I was blocked. I was supposed to do a reading immediately after the scam unfolded. I mean, it was 10 minutes after, oh my God, he's not coming back. This was a scam. And I had the phone number of my client, wasn't going on Zoom. I called her and said, I am so sorry. I was just scammed. I fell for it. There is no way I can do a reading for you now, and rescheduled it. That's very different than starting a reading, having no connection and calling it off. This is recognizing I'm out of balance. I can't do a reading. We will reschedule. So the first few days, just to show you how much awareness and the spiritual path plays into any trouble that you're going through, I was so aware of my feelings. It was so uncomfortable, so not me. And yet I didn't know quite what to do because I knew that overeating and sugar wouldn't help. So I had to feel it. I knew that drinking wouldn't help, and I really wanted to drink. But that phrase, would it help, is very helpful. And I mentioned before, I have this medical show that I was enjoying, The Resident. I don't have time for TV, so I'll pick one show and I'll watch a whole series one at a time when I just finally need to take a break. I had just watched the very last episode of 6 seasons of The Resident. It was over. And here I'm like, I can't overeat. I can't drink. I can't watch my show. And I realized TV is an escape. You know, it was so obvious to me that television is an escape. And I had no escape. My 3 go-tos were gone. So I just sat there feeling it all, which is exactly what helps, processing it instead of shoving it down, and then calling on Archangel Michael and clearing my chakras. So meanwhile, we're dealing with the practicalities of trying to fix Facebook, and we're getting nowhere, so we'd set it aside. And I tried to do a couple readings, and I had to call them off, so I attributed it to the scam. But I thought I was healing from the scam. So we'll get back to that in a minute. But accepting reality, I hope you've realized by what I just shared with you about not eating, drinking, and watching TV, accepting this is what's happening and not saying like the little kid, this can't be happening. That doesn't help anything. So accept reality, try trauma release, balance your chakras. And another coincidence, like the Ho'oponopono, there were no coincidences. Somebody gifted me a beautiful little bundle of sage. It came in the mail with perfect timing. So I'm saging this room where it happened. I'm saging myself much more than normal, and it actually made a difference. So right in the midst of all of this, we had already planned a retreat, a little team building gathering of the beautiful 6 ladies you saw at the beginning, the pregame show, and me meeting here in Hilton Head for a whole weekend, right in the midst of all of this. So we just said, we're putting it all aside. And I talked to Bev and Steph, and we all admitted to feeling paranoid. Every time I'd go on Facebook, Instagram, Zoom, and I talked to my guides about that. So when you have an issue, take it into meditation. I said, I don't like this feeling of paranoia. And they said, watch your word choice. Paranoia is a human trait. Up level your word choice. The soul is vigilant and alert. I would like you all to feel the difference in those words. Think about things you might be paranoid about. Don't maybe not even think about it. Just feel that word. The second I say paranoid, I constrict. My whole stomach and heart goes, I curl inward. Oh, I'm so paranoid. But it's an actual experience, paranoia. But now realize that is all part of our human drama. But we're not only human. All the evidence I shared previously shows us we're these beautiful souls who come here for the light and the dark to grow from it and evolve. That's why I'm sharing this with you now. I was going to say how stupid I was. My guide stopped me mid-word. What was I then? Gullible and vulnerable, okay? So feel that word paranoia, but realizing now that we are souls, the soul, when we remain in soul awareness and integrate that with our human story, we remain vigilant. Do you feel the openness to that? Alert, but not fear-filled. I shared that with Stephanie and Bev, and you could just feel the healing just in those words. And so we just reminded each other, and I have not slipped back into paranoia. The second I feel the slightest bit of fear, which still is popping up, so there's some remnant of something in me from that whole incident. We'll work on that. I just instantly go, vigilant. Is there anything I need to be aware of now? So I hope that's one of the major takeaways you have from this evening. But I did realize while I was still in the midst of the fear, that another great tool I've shared with many of you in one of these monthly connection webinars. And that was the teaching I learned from Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, the neurologist who showed us we have 4 characters that identify with various ways the brain works. And the left brain has these 2 characters. One of them is the thinking part of your brain that will, it's the ego part that tries to talk you out of things. The other is the wounded child part. And I encouraged everybody to get little stuffed animals to represent these 2 sides. Now, remember, the Navy commander is supposed to be mature and, wise. And I'm saying, get your stuffed animals out because it works. So I sat over here in my meditation room and I got out my little wounded child because she was definitely hurting. And I had a little conversation with her. When you do this and talk to your wounded child, you shift to soul awareness. You be that wiser part of you that can parent the wounded child, that can allow that part of you to feel safe. So you literally have a conversation. And I wrote down what I said to this little Susie, is what I call her. I talked to her and I said, you don't have to be scared anymore. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. And I felt her say, it's okay. And I said, do you have anything you want to say to me? Because that's part of the technique. You let that little child surprise you with something you don't expect them to say. And this little voice, it's not coming from the stuffed animal, it's coming from the subconscious, of course. She says, you're supposed to be the adult. It just cracked me up. Yes, you're right. I'm supposed to protect you. And she said, the way you're talking to him now, this is back when I still wanted to do harm to this guy that harmed me. The way you're talking to him doesn't feel good. And she was right. That's my human side. I wasn't being the soul. I was holding on to the anger. I was cursing him, buying into the drama. Can you see how it helps when we really know there are 2 distinct aspects to us? The story of state your name and the higher self, the soul. When we can integrate our soul's awareness into the drama, we can remain the wise, loving parent to our inner child. And I had forgotten that and wasn't doing it. And she called me out. And I was still remaining in fear. So within the story, all of this was very real, but there's more than our story. We use our stories to grow and evolve. So I know I'm learning lessons from all of this and happy to share them with you tonight. But we choose to live from the perspective beyond the story. And, those feelings of revenge and justice, they feel good, but it's not aligned with the soul and it doesn't help, like drinking and eating sugar and binge watching TV. In moderation, all of those are nice, but not when you use it to medicate and sedate feelings. So right after I had that little discussion with my inner child, Sanaya comes in and gave me a beautiful message, which I'll read for you. When surrounded by darkness, what do? Do not cower in a corner or grope about blindly. Bring in the light. In spiritual terms, this means to acknowledge that you, dear soul, are a being of light. If you are surrounded by darkness, this is an indicator that the layers of sensations, thoughts, and images that convince you from moment to moment that you are only human have become a bit thick. Simply shift to soul awareness with intention and affirm, I am the light, and allow this awareness to dispel the clouds. You are so very loved. And then Sanaya reminded me to affirm that and state to any energy that might be in our field lingering, you must completely leave my field now. I do that after every reading. So you bring in what's missing, the light and discernment. All righty. So I teach about discernment all the time. I teach about being aware, mindful, and having presence. So how did I fall for this scam? I've asked my guides about it, and I've done research. So I've honored the two ways we evolve: by honoring our human side and educating ourselves, honoring our soul side by learning from our guides and teachers in spirit. So there is a very human answer as to why I fell for this. It has to do with the left brain. And I'm going to share that with you because I did the research on how do we end up falling for scams. And I hope that'll help you. But I also found out there is an energetic reason why I fell for the scam, which I only figured out when I pieced together the timeline of cascading events before the Zoom reading with the scammer. I was already out of alignment before the scam happened, but I didn't know it. We'll get to that. So first, the left brain. How can someone be psychic? How can someone who's psychic be fooled? The same way any human can be fooled, because we all have a brain, and that left brain is programmed a certain way to keep us safe, to make us feel separate, to create stories. I've taught about the left brain a lot, but let me share. I found out at least 6 ways the left brain allows us to fall for scams. Many of you may not have heard of this scam that I fell for, but Stephanie found at least 3 articles online about it afterwards. I mean, step by step, cookie cutter scam. The person reaches out, tells you it's a big name podcast, offers you a little money for it, wants to meet with you to readjust your settings, doesn't turn the camera on, leads you through it. I mean, it's a thing out there. But most of us have only heard of the scams where people try to con you out of your money. All right. So here's how and why this happens to us. Number 1, cognitive biases. I call this, it's the program. It's what the left brain does. And the research shows we are social creatures. We know that, right? We are wired to trust others when it's a allegedly positive situation. This is an uplifting podcast. We're out to help people. Our brain automatically creates a feeling of trust around that. Scammers often use authoritative or professional personas to gain our trust. Number 2 reason we fall for it, they offer an exciting offer. I honestly didn't care about the honorarium. I knew Gabby Bernstein has a very large following. This was going to allow me to reach more people with the messages of hope. So that was the exciting offer. Maybe you can apply this in your life if somebody ever reaches out to you, of course, with a feeling of trust and an exciting offer, and you start to get those red flags. Be vigilant and alert. Number 3, authority bias. We're more likely to comply with instructions from someone who seems to be in a position of authority. And right there on the screen, podcast management, and we'd been emailing multiple emails back and forth. The next one, commitment and consistency. Once you commit to what they're talking about, agreeing to a small request, it has a snowball effect. You're more likely to commit to continue complying with one request after another. And that's exactly what happened once we were in the back end of Facebook. I'm just ready to get on with my reading, and he's saying, click here, and I'm just like a little robot clicking all these little settings. Stunning when you look back on it. Another way we fall, emotional manipulation. Fear and anxiety. Scammers often create urgency or fear. I remember when I said, aren't you going to turn on his camera? No, just share. I'm going to share the screen with you and you're going to show me this. And it was just this sense of urgency. And then he said, you want to be on the show, don't you? Hook, line, and sinker, right? Desire, promises of rewards appealed to our desire for gain. In my case, the gain of reaching more people. Empathy exploitation, playing on sympathy such as a sob story or fake charity. That did not apply in this case, but that's why the ones for a request for money often get through to people. This one was interesting. Scams work because of information processing shortcuts. The scammers overload the brain. Yeah, Stephanie could agree with me that he was just taking us through these steps, and I'm not used to the tech stuff. I was knocked off balance, so he's got me and he knew it. Confirmation bias. That means we tend to seek information that confirms our belief. Well, there it says podcast management, and he knows what he's doing. So my brain is saying, well, it must be so. It must be so. Lack of critical thinking under stress. I don't think I need to even explain that one. Yeah, self-imposed stress with a short term. I got a reading coming up here. I don't know what he's doing, but I want to be on the show. Novelty and uncertainty is another way they get us. The brain is less effective at detecting lies or risks in unfamiliar situations. Fascinating. And then social proof. Seeing others endorsing a scam increases its credibility. So here's Jeff saying, look, we've gone through this with everybody else. It's easy. You know, just go along with me. And so I did. So that's the left brain, human, technological side of why a human falls for a scam and why even my psychic stuff was turned off. Now for the energetic cause, for my lack of discernment. I went back and I looked back at when I had the first reading that I didn't have a good connection with. It was Thursday, January 16th, 5 days before I fell for the scam. I had a phone call with a woman about a project I'm working on. I'm always juggling multiple projects. I have 2 books that I'm working on, several upcoming workshops, presentations, a cruise, all kinds of projects. So I was talking with this woman who is an expert in the field I was working on, and I shared with her part of this project, and she said, let's talk about it on the phone, January 16th. For 40 minutes, she lit into me with her criticism of this project I was working on. She offered her advice, but it became a rant. And I shared some of her advice with my team, and they were pretty stunned by her vehemence, her insistence, her criticism, and she even dropped some F-bombs, saying that part of the project I was working on was effing weird. And we all thought that wasn't very professional. I was really glad to get off of that phone call after 40 minutes. What I didn't realize is how much that affected me energetically and why. I only know that I was really shaken afterwards and doubting my progress on this project, which is unusual because I'm guided so clearly by my guides in everything that I do. So to doubt that was really a different energy for me. I've had thought that the whole project was beautifully guided. So I was surprised that somebody who's an expert in the same field would criticize it. So 3 hours later, I had a scheduled reading, and that was the first one that went awry. I thought it might be related to me being a little off balance from that call, but I thought it was just an anomaly, and the next reading will be fine. I didn't have any other readings scheduled between the one that I called off the day of the scam. So I was not aware that I had been affected by that phone call with the woman. I do see now, though, that not only did it affect my reading, it affected my discernment with the scammer. The reason I know this now is because then I had to reschedule a second reading. Over the years, I've said to my students, you know, a medium can have the occasional reading that you have to call off. Our energy waivers, that's fine. You get 2 in a row, pay attention. There's probably something going on, but I've never had to call off more than 2 in a month, in 1 month. But it always causes you a little angst. Okay, what's the third one going to be? But never had a third one. When the third one I had to call off happened, now we have a problem. So what did I do? This is what I recommend to all of my students and any of you anytime when you know there's a challenge that chakra clearing and calling on your guides for help is not helping. Call on a trusted energy healer. I can see you on the screen, Annie. Many of you know that my favorite energy healer, my go-to friend is Annie Bond. She is the author of this awesome book, Awakening Prana, Annie B. Bond. She's now a teacher of Awakening Prana and teaching with the Shift Network, teaching her own classes and at the Omega Institute. We've had a beautiful exchange of energy over the years, and there have been times when I get gunked up energetically and I say, Annie, something's wrong. I need help. I have to let you all know right now, she is no longer practicing for the public. So how do you find an energy healer for yourself? Word of mouth. If you don't have any friends that know an energy healer, go to your nearest New Thought church like Unity or Science of Mind, or your nearest metaphysical store and get word of mouth recommendations for somebody that can see energy, see the movement, and know how to clear it. So I reached out to Annie and I said, something's going on. Could you please check my field and help me because I need help? And it's lovely. A true energy worker does not need to be present with you. She said, I'm on it and at a distance. Oh, I told her, I feel that it relates back to a phone conversation. I was scammed this week, but I don't think that's the cause of it. It has to do with a phone conversation I had with a woman. I told her nothing else but that. She checked into my energy field, and when she got back to me, she nailed the cause. I want to read to you what she wrote back to me. A huge thought form was in your field. Notice this. We are thought forms. She didn't say it's an evil being. She didn't say it's an attachment. It was a pattern of energy, a thought form that was in my field that was not my stuff. She was able to see it and saw it wrapped around my energy field from the head and neck all the way down to the toes, just totally enclosing my main pranic channel, the channel that the energy flows through. She says it was someone else's that had been sent to you, not because of ill intent. It was there because of their negative and dark thinking. She heard, this is from a jealous colleague. And I said, that's it. That's what happened. It was so unusual that that woman just went off when I shared with her about this project that I was working on and dropping F-bombs and telling me how it could be better. It was jealousy. But what happened was it triggered something in her. And as Annie explained it, I'm going to bring Annie in. She might need to correct me if I'm wrong. She projected that darkness. And I, as Annie identified, had some old childhood wound. Remember little Susie? A mother wound, many of them are, where I was not allowed to speak my truth, a lifelong challenge from my mom. And it got into my field that way and was just blocking the flow of energy. So what the beautiful thing is, once you identify it, and especially you're outside of the issue like Annie was, she removed it. And I mean, those of you who are science-minded may think it sounds crazy. Maybe it's a placebo effect. I know it's not. She removes it, checks the energy, and asks for archangels to heal that wound in me, to mend it, to heal my whole field, filling it with color and light. that goes exactly where it's needed. And what she removed was transmuted by the light, never to be able to hurt anybody again. That's it in brief. But I could feel right away, even before we talked, the healing was taking place. When you don't realize you're down and then it's gone, you can feel the difference. But I get on the phone and she said, this is going to take several hours actually, and you'll feel better as we go. And absolutely I did. Ooh, that happened the day that our staff retreat started. And I said, you know, I feel that Bev and Stephanie are also gunked up from the scam. I can feel it in their energy. Can you help them? And as a favor, she absolutely identified blockages in their third chakra, which is the power center, from me having drawn them into that scam. I'm sorry, girls, but she healed that as well. And I will tell you, we had a beautiful retreat. And 6 days later, I did my first reading after the healing. And that was some of the evidence that I shared with you today, some of those beautiful readings. So I'd like to bring Annie Bond in now. I've been looking at her. You all can't see her probably, but Annie, all you have to do is talk in a minute here and you'll come on the screen. But I'm feeling that some people, I'd like to hear what your comments on this, but I'm also feeling that some people may become concerned about thought forms affecting them. You know, what if I have a lot of childhood trauma? Do I have to be worried about all this stuff floating around? I'd love if you come on and just share a little of your expertise and any comments about what I shared.
Well, it was very straightforward because you were left after this conversation with the woman, unbeknownst to you, really very disempowered, and so that set you up for the scam because you were very disempowered, right? And because of her thought form, she also had it very clearly, the thought form was, I'm better than you are, I'm better than you are, because that was what was triggered in her, was she felt it really insecure. And so that thought form was putting you down, which then disempowered you and hit your own childhood wound that way. And so that third chakra of personal power in the world was hit Steph and Bev, all three of you, to make you vulnerable to somebody taking away your personal power. I think that the more I work with energy, the more I think that, and something that you've talked a lot about, is releasing is incredibly important. So if you're with somebody, like after that phone call, for example, one thing that could be very helpful would say, well, that didn't feel right. Ask the energy to go to the sun to be purified. Just do everything you can to release and it's something I have to say, after so many years, my respect for releasing has gone up and up and up and up, and it's very easy to just sort of not pay attention to it. But we don't have to carry this energy in us. We can release it, and so that's important to think of doing. I think that's probably the best the best advice I would have. So.
And my great advice is, a lot of people right now like, I need an energy healer, and this is a plug for Annie. She is an amazing teacher. Her book, again, Awakening Prana.
Thank you.
I use her balancing practice daily, pulling the energy in from below and above. From Wolf's Message taught me the importance of balancing the energies. The meditation to balance the energies is in the Wolf's Message book. It was years later that I met Annie, and she's teaching the same thing using the tree of life imagery. I love that. We pull in energy like the roots into the earth and down from the branches up above. I start rocking with that beautiful energy when it becomes balanced. Every day I use your practice, Annie. But you have classes online. What is your website?
It's awakeningprana.com, and my great joy is teaching people how to do the work themselves, how to learn how to heal themselves and to clear their own blockages so that they can be better connected and be more authentically who they are. And it's really so I teach 6-month schools, and I teach small things, but I have 3 courses, level 1, level 2, level 3, for energy healing. And and you don't have to want to be an energy healer. It's just being on the spiritual path, I think. And I just want to say that I met Suzanne because I had a website and she was going to Omega and she was looking for an energy healer and I happened to be in Rhinebeck, which is where Omega is, and she flew into Albany and knocked at my door. I never didn't know who she was. And this was 3 or 4 years before the pandemic, I guess. And this beaming woman, and I had her in the healing room, 2 feet from where I am right now. And we just became fast friends. And we've been friends ever since. And it was just really one of those special synchronicities. But knowing it's Suzanne, that's no surprise because you pull these things to you. But that was really fun. So
it was a beautiful God wink because I have been traveling across the country. I was supposed to teach a workshop at Omega all weekend, like I'm doing this July. And, traveling just gets us a little gunked up. And I thought, I'm here early. I would love to find an energy healer. It was nothing specific, just let's get a tune up. And I look online and there's an energy healer. Not just a few miles from Rhinebeck. I didn't just show up at your door. I called you, Annie.
no, I know, but when you arrived, you were
Yeah.
at my door. So.
And it was lovely. And it was outside of my box. I mean, I've talked about some things tonight that were going to sound really bizarre to people about pulling thought forms out. But when you're open to this, the only thing that matters is it helpful and healing? And every time I've worked with energy healers and I find healing from it and I find an improvement, I just learned to be open more. So I hope that you all have learned that God gives us each other for a reason. We each have gifts. Yeah, just we all have gifts. Every one of you. You're here for a reason, to serve others, and you don't have to do it all alone, and you can't do it all alone. So we find those on our path, like my 6 beautiful women on my team here, that we support each other, we heal each other, and it is not a failing to reach out for help. And I got to that point after those 3 readings. I need help. And that's why I find it so fascinating that an hour and a half before this podcast, I get an email from somebody going through the exact same thing. We're here for each other. And Annie, I honor you, bless you.
And Suzanne, likewise. My goodness, I'm very, very touched. Thank you.
So there you go, everybody. That's the whole saga. I will close that part of this evening with another message from Sanaya that came up in the midst of all of this. Sanaya, my guide, said, the heart is always pumping. The brain is always thinking. Now shift awareness to the spiritual center, the other eternal heart of you. It is always discerning, but its subtle messages are often drowned out by the loud pounding of the physical heart and the incessant chatter of the mind. What to do? Slow down when you feel excitement taking over for whatever reason. Pause more often and attune to the spiritual heart. What are you discerning? Safety or danger? Clarity or doubt? It is indeed the pause that refreshes by taking you back to knowing you are so very loved and part of a much greater whole. So there it is. We're back in balance. I hope you learned something for it. May you not have to put the painful parts to the test, but may your discernment increase and may you remain vigilant. I felt a lot of discouragement this last month at the things humans do to each other. And yet it simply refueled the sense of mission that we have to bring more love into our world and honor where people are on their path and realize that people who do things that hurt others are simply ignorant that we are all the light. All right. Let's do some questions and answers about this or any burning questions. Stephanie is going to field your questions. And Stephanie, be discerning if there are specific ones about this or what we've talked about. That would be very nice. But we'll do questions for not a full half hour like last month because this went so long. I do want time to let Sanaya come in and do some channeling and healing.
Absolutely. Well, the first is actually about Wolf's message. this person wanted to know about the documentary. Did you feel Wolf's presence during the filming of the documentary? Did he provide any more guidance at that time?
In all honesty, Wolf has so merged into the higher beings of Sanaya that I don't feel him as the young man who came through in the reading 10, 12 years ago. So I don't specifically feel him, but this whole project has been so divinely guided. It's stunning. Most definitely by Jim Spruill, the director's son, Dakota, my Susan. And I know Wolf's part of that, but I don't feel him as a separate being. I'm curious to know what Mike, his dad, and Beth, his stepmom, have felt throughout this. But we all, every day, we reach out and we celebrate together the beauty of how this is flowing. I've never had a project come together so easily, so beautifully, with so much potential to heal.
Awesome. That's great. All right, this one's from Amber. She says, thank you very much for sharing that story about your experience. She is having kind of like a similarly challenging time with the change in administration in the United States and feeling those feelings you were feeling.
Mhm.
Would you recommend, what would you recommend? Same thing for that? Would you underscore some of the same things for those feelings?
Yeah, that's absolutely everything we've shared tonight. There were so many little tools in there. You might need to go back and just write down all the little bullets, but there is nothing I could add to that right now. It all has to do with how the energy is affecting each of us. Some people are not affected by the collective consciousness right now. Some people are deeply affected by it. That's going to depend on your energetic pattern. So whatever is affecting you, when you are aware that something is affecting you and you're out of alignment with this flowing, coherent state that we are blessed to feel from time to time and hopefully often, when you become aware of being out of alignment, that's when you really bring in the tools.
Awesome. All right. This question is from Nina. When one of our loved ones crosses the veil, can our story be there to greet them in soul form, even though we're still incarnated?
Oh, okay. My guides are allowing me to answer this from my story. I had the most fascinating experience when my mother passed in meditation. I went to her. And she had such a disbelief in the afterlife. She remained in a kind of coma-like state when she first crossed. She was in a healing place, and I went to her side to tell her, you have passed now. It was so cool to have that reverse situation. And then she woke up and she was like, okay, I can get used to this. And the next thing you know, she's playing bridge with my dad across the veil, which is not a surprise. But I love that the question, Nina, was, your story. Can your story greet them? Because that's what we are. We're these characters playing roles. And our loved ones across the veil realize more than ever when the body is shed that they are the soul. And yet they continue playing the role as long as it still serves them across the veil and us. So that role will always be available if we need it, if it serves our growth. And let me ask the guides, yes. Well, there's usually not a need for us to go to them because they are so clearly present with us once they pass. All right.
Wow, beautiful. All right, this one is interesting. It's kind of an add-on to that, a little bit of an add-on, slightly different situation. Jeannie's husband was, when he had passed, he was a firm believer that once your dad lights out, it's over. And right before he passed, he said, I'm curious about what happens next. She wondered, have you, Suzanne, ever had a reading where someone on the spirit side admitted they were wrong when they were alive and thought this life was all there is?
Often, yes. And I see this symbol, and that means my eyes have been opened across the veil. I was wrong. And that in itself always proves to be evidential, because I'll say, I know from what your loved one is showing me that they had no belief in the afterlife. And they say, oh no, because when they do that, that's the big change sign. And I can tell you, my dad was one of those. And he gave me the most astounding evidence when he came through, irrefutable evidence. It was Dad, things that I didn't know that my mother could validate, and he was just kind of gobsmacked that he was still here. It was going to be, in his mind, the big black curtain comes down, and I just looked at him before he passed, and I said, Dad, we're going to have a talk. Once you're over there, you're going to see, but for now, that's fine. You go ahead and believe that. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. This one is from Anonymous about astral projection. And they're wondering, can you explain the difference between an out-of-body experience like an astral projection and the expanded states of awareness in terms of the soul and consciousness?
Okay. Astral projection gives us this image that our soul or our energetic being just leaves the body completely and goes traveling around. That is an adventure in consciousness that we have in awareness. It can appear that we're leaving the body, but the body is still embodying the higher self. The soul doesn't leave the body except at the time of death. So we do experience different realities, and they call it astral because the astral realm is the next level we go to when we actually die. Those experiences happen when we're in expanded states of consciousness. We lose our grip on the story and we open up to the fact that we are not only human and we're not stuck in these bodies. And so it becomes a dreamlike state. Don't you sometimes fly in your dreams and you just instantly, you're in a different place? A dream is a sort of astral projection, but in an actual out-of-body experience. And I put it in air quotes because we're not leaving the body. We're simply having an adventure in consciousness. We don't have to follow the same rules as in the physical world. We're instantly in other places. We experience them. We get evidence from them. Okay.
Beautiful. All right. Would you like another question?
You bet. Keep going. We'll do about five, at least
Okay.
five.
You mentioned, this one's from Deidre. You mentioned spirit from a miscarriage. I think this was earlier in the show. Is this true for people who have had abortions, and would the child that was aborted forgive the mother?
It's such a good question and an important one that does not depend on one's opinions about the rightness or wrongness. I can simply factually tell you that I have brought through many souls whose opportunity to be born was aborted, and I can tell the difference simply because of symbols that they show me. And I'll say, I know that you have a child that was aborted, and that's a pretty strong statement to make, but the person will look surprised. Many times they start crying, and I say, this little soul is right here and loves you to pieces. And there is zero judgment, and they know that learning has taken place from you as a result of that choice. And you will meet this soul when you pass. They're with you now, and they will meet you when you cross, and you're just going to continue loving each other. And that has happened in every case. And I see the exact same thing with miscarriages as well. It's just a different way that they did not come into a body.
All right. Thank you. All right. This one, in this, there are several in the same vein. So I'll go ahead and let's ask this one. If a medium is experiencing a slump, is it possible? You talked about a slump that you had tonight, right?
Right.
Is it possible that those of us in this call who have had slumps could receive some clearing and healing from our time here together?
Oh, that's a great question. Not really. Okay. Sanaya says, stay tuned.
Okay, good.
We
good.
do a healing as we prepare for me to channel them, and they've always promised us that they give us an energetic transmission. So that's lovely. We'll see what happens.
Okay. All right, here's one from Anonymous. Since my awakening, I feel almost continuously like I'm buzzing with a really strong vibration inside. Sometimes it's so powerful I can't even fall asleep. I've been told I should ground, but I don't mind the feeling. But can you tell us what this is exactly?
Oh, it's definitely you're sensing the higher energy that's coursing through you. You're more aware and alert of sensations, but those will in time level out as you adjust to it. We are just like if you smell a perfume after a while, the perfume doesn't go away, but you no longer smell it because you're so used to it. Or noise. You move to the city, you hear all that noise at first and you can't sleep, and then it just doesn't bother you anymore. Same with the higher vibration, and you'll probably just settle into that new vibe for a while. And then because the path is ever onward, ever upward, like a spiral, then you'll have another upgrade. And that's why I always say it just keeps getting better. But if it becomes too bothersome, truly, you simply say to spirit, back it off a bit. And you can, with intention, sedate each of your chakras. Just bring them in a little bit. I do that after this evening. I'll do it for sure. After presentations and workshops. Stephanie was with me in Marin County 2 weeks ago when at the Expand conference in California. And I said, I got to go bring my chakras back in. In fact, everybody in the room had to. It was buzzing so high with the energy. So yeah, you just take your intention and ask that back off a little bit, but enjoy it if it's not bothersome. I love the buzz.
Very cool. All right. This one, may I ask Suzanne and Annie a little bit more about that releasing practice that was discussed? It sounds very powerful. And how can I do that myself?
Annie, you still here? I'd love to have you just do a little bit more on that if you are. I know she.
There are a number of different ways, and try them all out to see what works for you. One thing can be just really simple. You ask a white puffy cloud to come down in front of you, and you release what you can release to the cloud until it gets darker and darker and darker, and then ask that dark cloud to go to the sun to be purified. Then ask another cloud to come and release into that cloud until it gets darker. And that's a very, very, very powerful method of releasing. I like to release with the elements too. I ask earth to magnetize down all that I can release. I ask water to wash away that which I can release, fire to burn away that which I can release, air to dislodge and blow away that which I can release, and ether to remove that which I can release. That's very effective. And then the other is just to simply ask, you could ask any of the archangels, any of your divine etheric team to come help you and take something off to take it to the sun to be purified. I often will use a variety of things depending on how successful it feels like some energy is moving more than others. Because sometimes the clouds work better than the sun to be purified, but other times the other half is better, if you see what I mean. So
Beautiful. I recognize that second one because I use your recording 5 times a week. I ask the earth to, the fire to burn it away, the air to blow it away. I use it all the time, and I've seen a beautiful, beautiful improvement in my clarity by using it. So your recordings are available. You have some on a YouTube channel, right?
Well, on an Awakening Prana, I have a whole ton of sound healings and meditations and everything, and they're all free. So
what a gift, huh, everybody? Yeah. awakeningprana.com. Annie, I love you. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll end with that one now. Thank you, Steph, and thank you all for the questions, because we want to do some healing. Promise that, and a little channeling. Okay, let me clear my lap here. I know that Mike and Beth and Pasakarnas are tuning in, and we have all been sending healing energy to Beth for her journey with leukemia. She got some good news this past month, and yet still needs a lot of strength and immunity to build back up. So if you would hold Beth in your healing prayers as we do this together now, but also bring to mind anybody in your world who could use healing. We all could use it, but know that you will receive it as you give it. we've really learned that by not being concerned with ourselves, focusing mainly on healing others, we actually receive more. So how do you do this? Just know that, like that tree, you're pulling in the prana, life force, pulling it in with your intention, but now you're intending that it go out to where it's needed and that healing take place. My guides have assured me that they're also sending energy through me and through this field that we all created when we did the invocation, so that you all receive it. So anybody who has some blockages or wounds that the guides know it will help you to heal now, they'll help you with that. But do know that sometimes healing doesn't take place because there are still lessons to learn from it, which is a hard lesson to learn. But healing takes place at different times in different ways, and we trust the process. But we do ask for healing to take place as a result of our intentions and our presence here tonight. So while you're doing the healing, I'm going to be attuning to my guides, inviting them in. I have no idea what they're going to talk about, but I do know that after telling that story, I could use some of your love. So if you would just add, I just said, don't think about yourself, but I can feel my energy, and I'm asking you all to also turn up the love for me, because that makes a big difference when I channel. All right. So I will see you when I come back from channeling. And meanwhile, would you please start sending your healing energy to those who need it? Good evening. We are most grateful to be able to speak with all of you audibly, although we have been speaking through Suzanne throughout the evening, helping her to share this story with you. Yes, she was used as a bit of a pawn, for the damage could have been much greater, but yet it did serve a purpose. You must understand that we can step in and help, and we often do. We, your guides, her guides. It is all about the growth and the evolution. As Suzanne began tuning into us just now, we were putting an image in her mind that surprised her quite a bit, for it was the last thing she expected us to be showing her. But again, it is for the lesson. And that image is that just the other day, whilst she and her husband were walking the dogs, they did notice upon the ground in the yard the lifeless body of a squirrel. A bit shocking to see a deceased animal there that was once running about, enjoying its life, and suddenly lacking life. And there was the awareness that they would have to dispose of that. And Suzanne got to play the role of the female and turn to the male and say, well, that is your job, darling. And of course, we bring a bit of humor in here to lighten the energy a bit. But we bring up this story for the next day. The body was no longer there before the husband had a chance to pick it up. What happened? Why another animal used the body for its benefit. And this is life. What appears to be painful is part of a story, but it is part of the ongoing cycle of life, that which returns to the earth as ashes or dust, that which is used to fuel another animal, continues the life, whilst that which was the vitality of that body was not harmed at all. The life force which flows through all of you cannot be harmed. You see a lifeless body, and now memories in all of you of loved ones who have passed comes to mind, and you do not want to think about this. These are distasteful visions, and we understand this, but we wish you to know that this recycling of physical matter is so that the stories can continue, so that the learning and the education takes place, so that you can go on creating. But you, dear ones, never end. You do not die. The body may appear lifeless. The life force is most definitely recycled. And yet, as you have heard this evening, the stories do continue. Your loved one will reenact their story as needed for you to meet them when you pass. Does this mean that they were not real? Not at all. They are part of a greater soul that is enacting multiple stories here, now, eternally, in the eternal now. Life never ends. It does not become tiresome to the soul, for it is a constant bubbling up of the life force for the joy of it. And as you have heard this evening, many times it is not joyous at all, whilst caught up in the human story. At this very moment, there are many of you who are feeling a bit, as Suzanne is wont to say, gunked up. The flow is out of alignment. We can see it. You have healers who can see it and discern the misalignment. But if you are true to your awareness, true to the self, you can feel it. Do not be afraid of this. Most especially, do not judge yourself for being gunked up or blocked, as it were. This is part of the human condition. And coming to heal these conditions is part of the process as well. And as the clouds part, and we most appreciate the analogy you have been given of imparting the darkness into these clouds, as they part, as the light comes in to heal you, you will feel that upliftment. You will realize you are connected to all that is. You are the very flow of the light. That which we were doing earlier was imparting you with a bit more of the light so that you can heal. Trust that this is so, that yes, it can be that easy. And yet you are not all healed instantly. Perhaps you were confused by what Suzanne was saying earlier, that healing does not always take place when you want it and as you want it, for there are great lessons to be learned from your challenges. Suzanne wanted nothing more than to go back to the way things were, to not feel the paranoia, to sedate the feelings, and yet have not multiple lessons been gained? And did not many of you tune in this morning? For the human does enjoy a bit of drama. If that is what has drawn you here this evening, and you have learned and grown from it as a result, then this was an opportunity. You are not only human, your being is fluid. Discomfort, dis-ease, pain and suffering are indicators of a bit of misalignment in the flow of the life force. Again, nothing for which to be ashamed. You all carry trauma. It is part of the human condition. You as souls knew that you would encounter difficulties and pain, and yet willingly took it on. Not out of some desire to experience pain, but with the awareness that from it would come growth. From it, you would help to serve the whole. And we honor all of you for the courage and the strength to come into human bodies, for the lessons that would be gained for it. Not a lesson such as you were a bad child and need to learn your lessons, but the lessons in how to be the presence of love and bring more love back home when this incarnation ends. The body may be removed, may be disposed of, but what that body has enabled energetically to be returned to the whole is far greater than you will ever realize whilst in a body. For these bodies do hide from you the fullness of the light that you take back with you when you make choices that are in alignment with the soul. We are most grateful that you have chosen to join with us this evening, and we do hope that you have felt the buzz from the energy we are most blessed to transmit to you this evening. We are most grateful to all of you for being on this journey with us. We do not consider ourselves superior to you, simply a unique vibration that just as you turn to your energy healers and your scientists all contribute to healing in their own ways, we also bring a unique vibration, and we are so grateful that you have answered the call and are open to receiving our gifts. You, dear ones, are gifts to us and to the world, for you understand how important you are to the whole. We thank you for your attention and your presence here this evening. May we impress upon you, as always, you are so very loved. It is not just a trite phrase to make you feel good. It is truth, for there can be no other way where there is no separation. That is love. We bid you good night. So nice. Wow. I heard a lot of that, and I remember thinking, why are they showing me that squirrel? I hope that made sense what they said. We don't need to fear death, that's for sure. Well, let me just wrap this up, bring it back a little bit down to earth with a lovely earthly story that happened at the Expand conference in San Rafael, California. I was corrected by those who lived there. I was a Spanish major, so I thought I was going to San Rafael, and they all laughed at me because when you live there, you call it San Rafael. Now I know. But I showed up at the hotel, and the first full day, just like we will do in Atlanta, we're 6 of the authors of the series of books called Sacred Stories. My book, Mediumship, is part of that series. And so 5 of the other authors and I spent the first day, Saturday, sharing our own stories and teaching. And then the second day, anybody who wanted to spend the whole day with some of those teachers went to their workshop. So I had a whole day workshop, and I had one ballroom to myself. And Stephanie and I got there early, and we went to set up. And the ballroom was so stark. The tablecloths were black. The chairs were black. The carpet was black. The walls were gray. And I thought, oh, I didn't bring flowers. When I do my own workshops, I always buy flowers ahead of time, and I set them on the table, and flowers truly carry an energy. Annie, I can see you. They really do, don't they? Fresh flowers. Yeah. And I was missing that energy. Well, we were all set up, and I said to Steph, I'm going to go back to the room and clear my chakras and align with spirit and get ready for the workshop. So I went up to the room and I went into meditation, and I called on Sanaya, and I said, I really would like some flowers for this workshop. Lead me to someone in the hotel or somewhere that even if they're fake flowers, at least it'll remind us of the energy. And I had a nice meditation. Now it's time to go back down. I walk into the room, and this participant in the workshop walks in the back, walks up to me with a dozen red roses. And I just looked at her and I said, seriously, you brought me flowers? She said, I was on my way here and I heard, take Suzanne flowers. And she stopped and bought the flowers. I mean, I hope you all have goosebumps. It's just so awesome. And she said, I hope you don't mind, but I've been having back problems for years, and I almost didn't come because I don't know if I can sit all day, but I may have to stand up. She said that, and this energy came over me. I don't often do healing. I allow Sanaya to heal through me a lot, but as far as doing hands-on healing or energy healing, I've done it in the past with success, but immediately my hand went up and I just got quiet and I waited and she was quiet and I knew she was getting a healing and I held it till I heard it is done. And I looked at her and I said, you just got a healing. Let me know. And she emailed me last week. She said, I have to tell you, I truly feel better. And I wrote back and I said, I need you to quantify that. And she wrote back and she said, well, let me see. I have it right here. I want to make sure I get it right. She said, before the healing, my pain was a 7 out of 10 consistently. It is now 3 to 4. So a very significant change. I love that. It's so affirming. We all can heal each other when we trust and honor who we are. We are souls in human bodies. The more you acknowledge that, and I wanted to say work to heal yourself, but I was stopped there. Make all good effort to come into alignment with who you are, because it really does not need to feel like work. It's a journey and it's a beautiful one. The more you make all good effort to clear blockages, to release trauma, the more that healing force can heal you and those around you. It's the natural gift of being a soul. So I hope that the lessons we've shared tonight have brought healing to you at a conscious level. Subconsciously, I know healing has taken place, and I look forward to how that will unfold for you in the coming days. I want to thank my team for helping us get together tonight to come into alignment, for greeting everybody so beautifully, for helping me with this work that is ongoing. And I love all of you so much. I did an interview yesterday, a podcast, and the person said, how has your life changed? How has your personality changed? And I said, you know, my personality hasn't changed that much. I've always been kind of bubbly and enthusiastic about life. But what has changed is that I now see and feel the soul in everyone. And even if I don't resonate with their story, I truly love everyone. And these events just bring me to overflowing. And so if that's going to spew all over you, may you please soak up the love, because we can never get too much of that. So thank you for joining us. Go out and spread that love around. Good night.